want to bring a new group onto the stage that absolutely lit the way for Israelis in the aftermath of October 7th. And those are healthcare workers. And we've spoken through for a bit in the past, but bringing back that subject, I'm really pleased to welcome to the stage Dr. Lucian Tatsa-Laur, head of the new Trauma Rehabilitation Center at Assuta Ashdod Public Hospital, and Yael Ativ, senior director of resource development and CEO of Friends of Assuta Ashdod Associations. Round of applause, everybody. Now's the time. Thank you. Thank you.
Build resilience and create a strong future for the state of Israel and the Jewish people, it is urgent and critical that we address the emotional traumas we have all experienced since October 7th. It is possible. Let us unite together in our efforts to heal, support each other, and restore our collective strength.
Thank you both very much for joining us today. You know, I have to say, our discussion prior to this interview, for anybody who doesn't know the behind the scenes in journalism, we have discussions prior to these interviews, really struck a nerve with me because the way that Assuta Ashdod addresses trauma is something like no other. So Luci, first I want to turn to you to hear basically, you were the head of the mental health department and array in the IDF Medical Corps. How did your unit address the mental health issues during October 7th?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having us. It's a big honor, and I want to start at 6:30 at the morning of October 7th. We heard a lot of stories about that day. Maybe every Israeli probably remembers the exact thing that he did at that really moment. Maybe every Jewish person remembers that moment. I was in bed, my small child came into the room and he said, Daddy, there are missiles, they are firing. And I told him, what are you talking about? There is nothing going on. And then we woke up to the atrocities that we have all encountered. During that day, everything opened up, and the first person I called was my officer in the Southern Command. And she lives in Otef, Aza. And I pick up the phone and I talk to her, and she's quivering, and she says to me, I cannot talk. I'm in the safe room with my small children. My husband is outside fighting Hamas terrorists. And that was the first minute I understood that we are dealing with something which is completely different. It's completely different because us as mental health officers or professionals, we usually observe people who have been traumatized. We are not part of that thing. And in that moment, I really understood that we are part of what happened there.
You're part of the same trauma that will later be the same trauma that you're going to be treating.
Yeah, exactly that. And you cannot be really detached. And I think that nobody can be detached. Nobody, and we've heard a lot of stories here today, people surviving captivity, people losing their spouses, people being displaced from their homes. They are all suffering severe traumatic loss. But we are all affected by this huge aspect of trauma. But what was really, really amazing about what happened later on is that, I don't know if you remember what happened in the IDF at the first hours, but a lot of our units lost a lot of their commanders. People were kidnapped. There was a lot of chaos, and we needed to keep on fighting. And one of the most amazing things was that I got telephones for commanders from people in Golani, in Givati, telling us we want mental health officers. This is something which we have never witnessed before. And we sent mental health officers over there, and they were able to use them in order to build up their units and to go on fighting. And this is a very, very important thing that we learned in that day. That when you have people that are with their units, and now we have mental health officers which go back into Gaza, and they are there with the commanders, and they support them, and they enable them to build resilience and to keep on doing their work.
So, I mean, it's a situation that is really like no other, right? Like you're serving the army and you're in real time receiving this treatment, but how, nevertheless, do you believe that this should inform civilian systems of treatment?
Okay, so we don't have a lot of time, but I think that things...
Yeah, I asked you in a 3-hour long question.
So, but I will do it in short, and I think we've heard it from Andrei and Michal as well. One of the things that happens when you suffer a traumatic event is that you are stripped of all your identity. You are stripped of all your reality. Even us in the IDF, we were stripped of our identity. We thought that we were the toughest military on earth, and that we could deal with Hamas in a few hours, days, and so on. And here we are, a year later, with a totally different perspective. But this is what happened to all of the southern of Israel, that their ability to trust in the world, to trust in themselves, to have powers was lost. And we need to restructure that. And how do we build that? And here I want to come to something which is very important, because every such initiative needs to be very local. Because in order to rebuild the trust, you need to have somebody like our embedded mental health officers. We go with the commanders. You need somebody who is on the ground. And hospitals like Assuta, Ashdod, that were there on the ground before the war, and they did an excellent job in saving a lot of lives and a lot of people, are the hubs in which resilience can build on. And we need to use the community and support it.
Yeah, I think Assuta Ashdod, among its many positive qualities. Something unique about it is that because of its, almost strategic location, it had this ability, and its staff had this understanding of the uniqueness of that region and the challenges that were within it that don't exist in other places or other regions. So yeah, I want to actually turn to you and ask you, as somebody who kind of has that overhead sight and vision, what are the core values of a high quality hospital? I know that's a very general concept, but what would you pinpoint?
Okay, so if we considering it's in Israel, the first answer would be parking, because there's no parking in hospitals in Israel. But well, I think basically everyone knows that a hospital, you need a structure, equipment, and manpower. You can have the most unbelievable infrastructure, and you can have the finest equipment that money can buy. But if your manpower is not superb, the hospital will not be viable. And that's basically the real value of Assuta Ashdod. We are not cynicists. It is a Zionistic game changer in public medical care in southern Israel. I've heard a lot this evening people talking about how imperative it is to invest now in southern Israel. Even I, as a fundraiser, I'm very, very, very careful to say that the whole issue of rehabilitation, especially emotional rehabilitation, must be left to the medical professionals, whether they are the hospitals in the south or in the north or in the center of Israel. But I can tell you one thing, that being a public hospital in the periphery of Israel, the newest public hospital, by the way, the only hospital that was built since 45 years, since the Startup Nation era, we are determined and adamant that the residents of the periphery of southern Israel deserve the exact quality of services as the people do in center of Israel. And whether that's medical or educational, that is what we believe in.
So, I mean, like you said, Assuta is absolutely unique in its ability to do that. Absolutely, thank you. And I think that's a very strong point that you're making right now, but I want to kind of tie it back to what you were saying earlier. So how does Assuta Ashdod specifically respond to what I think at this point can be recognized as a problem of resilience in Israel?
Okay, if I could possibly answer that, because Luci is very modest. Luci is one of the even before October 7th.
I'll stop you for 1 second, one moment. Guys, I'm so happy that you all are exciting and enjoying your meal, but if we could lower the volume down a tiny bit, we could hear you very strongly from on the stage. Thank you. Go ahead.
Luci is one of the finest psychiatrists in the area, in the world. He was in the Ukraine for a year. He didn't believe October 7th would happen when it happened. In the whole area of trauma and post-trauma. And when he called me and we spoke initially, he has deep connections with our hospital. I said, Jesus, Luci, what are we going to do about this post-trauma? He said, what are you talking about? The country is in trauma, and we will be in trauma for 50 years if we do not deal with it.
If I can just add a few...
Closing remarks, go ahead.
Just closing remarks. There is a lot of this disparity and disequilibrium about the resources that there are in the South as opposed to other places. The rehabilitation and mental health are scarce all around Israel, but in the South they are much more scarce than ever. And this is why we need places like Assuta Ashdod to be able to reach out in the community and make a change, and I think that we can do that.
And I'll just add one more sentence. Luci has created a groundbreaking model for resilience and trauma growth. He's been working on it since the 8th of October. It's his vision. We will do it with help or without help. We would love help to do it because it'll be a national model that will be hopefully copied.
Absolutely,
around
and I
Israel.
really hope that you manage to revolutionize mental health care. Lucian Yael, everybody, thank you very much.
Thank you.